I spent all this time writing a book, waiting for post-production to finish on the movie. And then I showed up to a dinner at the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival in 2014, which we ended up going, the movie ended up going on to win. I showed up with the first edition of the book, like at a dinner with all the cast and stuff. And they were like, what is it? I'm like, it's a book.
Hey everyone, I'm TJ Stecker. Welcome back to Fireside Writer. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know I usually talk about crime fiction. Connolly, Lehane, the writers who shaped how I think about story. Today is a little different. The first difference is I have a guest. And the second one is he's not a novelist. He's an independent filmmaker named Frankie Frayne. He's directed 4 feature films, including Having Fun Up There. Frankie runs Red Cow Entertainment, a Boston-based media group known for comedy cartoons, podcasts, web series, and feature films. He's a writer, a podcaster. He's been making things since he was 12 years old. He also wrote a book called More Weight, and that's why I asked him here today. More Weight is the honest, behind-the-scenes account of what it took to actually make this film, Having Fun Up There. The 9 grueling production days, the festival circuit, the distribution woes, all of it. Now you might be thinking, I'm a writer. Why do I care about an indie filmmaker's memoir? Here's why. Beyond the fact that his book is stunningly well written and engaging, it struck me how similar indie filmmaking is to indie publishing. Film festivals are akin to our literary conventions. Distributors are our publishers. The 4-month wait for a rejection email is universal. Frankie's been through every step of this gauntlet that many of us are in right now, and he wrote a book about it. So I wanted to sit down with him and find out, what do indie filmmakers know that indie writers need to learn? So grab a coffee and let's get into it.
Back here with Frankie Frayne and the author of More Weight and Having Fun Up There. So we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about his writing process for this great book that I just read and the movie that I just watched. So
You've seen the movie.
Yeah, so I did enjoy the movie. I picked it up off Red Cow Entertainment, Frankie's website. Make sure you check it out. So Frankie, the big thing I found in both the book and the movie was a theme of making art. It has to be enough. And was that sort of your guiding principle when you were going into making the movie and to writing the book?
Yeah, I hadn't intended to write a book. So for those unfamiliar, this was my 4th feature film. We shot it in 2013. It was released in 2014. And up until that point, we had always shot movies in kind of like a sporadic way. Like my first feature was very chaotic, and then we got better each time. But even like the third one, it was shot across several months. Like you would find opportunities to shoot. And this was like the first time that we said, let's try to do it all in one go. Mostly because the guy that we had cast, his name was John Ryan. He went on to be like a personality at IGN. And he had been in my past films too. He was going to be flying out from San Francisco. And so I only had him for a period of time, and we're like, well, maybe we can just shoot the whole movie while we have him. And that, for a bunch of independent filmmakers who were like taking time off from their day jobs to make a movie, that was just a very different experience. And so that kind of inspired, once it was all done, and I remember I had edited the whole movie in maybe the first like 2 weeks when it was done. I didn't have a child at that time, so I was just like available to work on my movie. And I remember I was showing people the rough cut, and then I had a colorist named Will Rogan who needed more time to do the color correction. And so I had more time. And I remember on my 3rd movie, which is called Sexually Frank, I had written like a kind of like a long form essay about some of the core principles of making the movie. I had done like a few other, like musings about filmmaking. And I thought like, oh, I should write one of those for Having Fun Up There. And it turned into like one chapter and then another chapter and then another chapter and another. And yeah, I remember like, I would normally start writing sometime around like 9 p.m. probably. And then I'd end around midnight or so. Normally just get a lot of momentum going. I was riding a bus back then every day to go to work. And so a lot of time spent riding on the bus. But I remember the parlor trick. What was really fun about it was I spent all this time writing a book, waiting for post-production to finish on the movie. And then I showed up to a dinner at the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival in 2014, which we ended up going, the movie ended up going on to win. I showed up with the first edition of the book, like at a dinner with all the cast and stuff. And they were like, what is it? I'm like, it's a book. back then there was just a lot of, I don't know. I had like, and I still do, of course we output podcasts and YouTube videos, and like we're constantly, like I've been creatively churning for like 27 years or something, but there was so much creative momentum in that moment. And ironically, that was my most recent. So now we're going back like 12 years, fiction narrative. I kind of stopped after that. That doesn't mean I'll never go back and make a movie. Like I intend to, but I knew I was going to probably be having a child somewhat soon, and my career was picking up, and back to your question about, is art enough? That was the movie where I was like, I'm going to kind of make the statement, about art being enough. And it's been interesting because I've gone on to do, like, YouTube has become the primary thing in my creative life. I was just having a conversation with my friends, Hayden and Jason, who have appeared on the Red Cow Arcade podcast lots of times. And we were kind of all talking about like, what do you have to do to be successful on YouTube? It seems like it's like a high quantity, low effort kind of a game. And, so you're very incentivized to put out, as much as you can for as little time as you can. And that's kind of anti-art or anti-creativity in some ways. It's kind of like the age-old like art versus commerce thing, which this book and this movie kind of deal with. But I was just talking to those guys, and I was like, well, listen, like, going all the way back to Having Fun Up There, a movie about a musician who kind of learns that like it has to be enough to keep you motivated. I was like, would you make these videos for nobody? Now that's like kind of question number one. I think question number two is like, if you have a few hundred people, a few thousand people like tuning in regularly, like call yourself a success. Like don't spend a lot of time worried about like how unsuccessful you are. That's like, I call, in the artistic creative world, especially in a saturated one, I'd call that successful. That was one of the things that's in this movie, which is this character, Mark. He's a musician, and he's late 30s, and he's kind of like, I don't know. He like never grew out of like college aged, and he's like an alcoholic, and he's still like sleeping on couches and this kind of thing. But there's a young woman, maybe 15 years his junior, who actually has been like listening to his independent music all along. He's never really like ran into somebody who has followed his career, and like just having that one person in his life who cared, like made all the difference to him. So that was like one of the, I think sometimes we get caught up in like how much audience is enough audience, and how much, it's like, well, how about like one person? Let's start with like, are you happy that person cares enough to watch, No,
I guess I didn't think about that when I watched the movie. When she shows up in his life and says that she's a fan, had watched or seen all of his performances or heard them all. Were you hoping that the audience would take away that was his epiphany moment, that, oh yes, having one dedicated fan is enough for me to propel to continue my art? Was that the sort of thing you were trying to get across?
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of based loosely on like a young person who it turned out had been watching Red Cow for a while, who like connected with us. And I was like, wow, this is just knowing that to you, this all matters. This is before we had like kind of more regular fans, and we're getting sent like mac and cheese from around the world. Your audience is like, what are you talking about, mac and cheese? We do a web series on our other channel called Box Mac, where we review it's like a comedy cooking show where we review every single macaroni and cheese. It's like one of the several things that we're kind of known for. So on YouTube, we've, amassed a little bit of an audience, but like back then, how would anybody have followed your independent movie career where you're not on like a streaming platform? They didn't even exist back then, not as much. Like maybe they saw you at like a film festival, like maybe they saw, like wrote a review about you or something. But it was hard to get any kind of traction. So just knowing that there was somebody was like made a big difference. In the movie, to your question, in the movie, there's a big scene in Salem, Massachusetts around Halloween time, classically, where after he gets this kind of like this attention from her, she's like, hey, I'm going to actually move away and get a job, like, playing commercial music. And it really like upsets him because now, the one person that wasn't kind of too mature for him has now matured past him, and I think he says it in plain English. He's like, it mattered to me that you cared.
I think that's something that all of us artists and writers can relate to, is just, why are we doing this? And
right.
So for that purpose, I think this movie hit quite a bit of those beats in my personal life, and for all the writers watching. you should
Yeah,
check
well,
it out
writers,
for
it's
those
even harder
reasons.
for writers because, like, how often do people crack open a book? Like,
Well,
at least on YouTube, it can be like passive entertainment or passive content. You can kind of like sneak into their morning commutes or something. But like getting somebody to take a risk on reading your book, I think that's what I don't think I've ever done a dedicated interview about the book before. So I was like, oh, this will be kind of fun. People, it seemed to enjoy More Weight, but it's one of those things where like they have to. You know, by no means is it as well read as the videos are well viewed.
You said the title again, More Weight, and that brings up the question. I was listening to the book again today. I've listened to it now 2 or 3 times.
Oh wow!
And the more weight sort of phrase in the movie came across as you talk about in the book. That sort of improvisation you had to do when your location became unavailable and you had to go to Salem, and then the More Weight line came about in the movie. And now that's the title of the book. So the title More Weight, you don't really discuss its meaning within the book.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through how you sort of stuck with that?
Yeah. Well, so
and that little story about how you even came up with that phrase within the movie.
Right. So, as established, this is a movie about a struggling musician who's kind of like too old for sleeping on couches and trying to get low paid gigs. And he's kind of having this like, I don't know if you'd call it a middle-age crisis, but something like that, where he's like, am I really, am I going to work as like a barista? Am I going to work in food service or as a bar back to support the art? Or should I focus more on like making sure my finances and my life are in order? And then the art comes second. Is that a betrayal of who I am? Right. I think a lot of artists ask that question of because you kind of make a promise to your young artistic self that you're never going to throw in the towel. The throwing in the towel is like the ultimate betrayal. And so this is a movie about an artist who's kind of like, should I throw in the towel? That's like a bit of what's there. And spoilers, what he kind of comes up with is like, I'm going to make music because I love making music and I'm not going to stress out about much else. And so the writer of the movie, his name is Jeff Torelli. He was a Boston-based, Somerville-based musician. And like a lot of the kind of texture in the world of the movie comes from his life and from, as a matter of fact, like his bandmates are in the movie. One of his like chief collaborators, his name is Johnny Northrup. He does like all the music in the movie, and plays, on screen and stuff. I love that guy's music. I'd love to put more of his music in another movie someday. And, but Jeff had this idea. I'm not sure where it came from, but he wanted this scene, this kind of like end of second act, all is lost, awkward conflict, the one described at Salem. He wanted that Salem scene to take place at Canobie Lake Park in New Hampshire, for anybody who's from like from New England. I think part of it was because we really liked the idea. We wanted the movie to be New England autumn. Like we wanted it to, for you to have that sense of place and space. And Canobie Lake Park is just so New England. It's just one of those, And so anyway, it started drizzling that morning. I remember in the morning we were shooting at a road race. Mark, the main character, was he had like a gig job, selling like protein bars at a road race. And so we went to a real road race and we shot there. We got permission to shoot there and be a fake vendor. And of course, people were coming up to us thinking that we were really handing. I think we actually probably did hand out some actual protein bar just to make people happy. I remember we shot there, it was drizzling, and we're like, geez, I hope that like Canobie Lake Park's going to be okay. And we got like a last minute call. Canobie Lake was super sweet. I remember like the fact that they would let us shoot in their park in the first place, and we didn't have to pay to get in. They were just going to let us do it. Then they were nice enough to call us and be like, we're so sorry, but we're closed for weather. All the rides are shut down and stuff.
Sounds better than the bowling alley experience.
Yes. Yeah. You're referring to, we thought we had gotten permission to shoot at a bowling alley and the guy ended up like crawling up our ass about it and charged us at the last minute. But these guys are really nice, but it fell through. So, and this is all detailed in the book, of course. So then we started kind of rapidly thinking like, all right, what else is very New England? Is like King Richard's Fair, I don't know, like the cranberry bogs, where they, the ocean burst or whatever, it's ocean spray, cranberries, like where could we go? And I think somebody, of course it's like October 6th and somebody was like Salem, we should go to Salem. And I was like, there's no way we're going to like be able to park. Like, it's going to be horrible to go shoot at Salem right now. It's like the worst time ever for tourists to show up at Salem. And I remember we did find, like, we got there early enough that we found some parking. And of course, it's like 3 or 4 cars. It's like the whole lot of us. We got out and we said, like, let's leave all the equipment in the car. And we started just wandering around the sort of historic, shopping area streets, just trying to figure out, like, and we rewrote it so Jeff rewrote it on the way. The actors were running lines in the car. So we're just like making up a new scene. The plot beats were going to be the same, but now it needed to make sense that we were at Salem.
Right.
I think there was dialogue about Canopy Lake Park and one of the rides and stuff. And so now we're changing it about, like, you've never been to Salem? You've lived in New England all your life? By the way, I love Salem. I go like, whenever I can. Yeah, I went a couple weekends ago. I just love it there. They have a great video game store. They have a great, like, giant comic book collectible store. So we're walking along. We see, like, they're doing like face paint for Halloween. And we thought, oh, maybe Hannah is getting her face painted. And that's where they could have this conversation. Because whenever especially with an independent movie, when you're shooting on location, you're looking for, like, visual storytelling, visual opportunities. You don't want 2 characters just standing there, generally speaking. Like, blocking matters. It keeps the scene interesting. There's an old saying, there's, when you're communicating 2 things, the thing you're saying and also how you feel about the person you're speaking to. And so blocking and visual, body language are going to communicate a lot of that. So just looking for, like, you talk
about giving them a reason to move.
Yeah. Giving them a reason to move. Exactly. Yeah, you got it. So the face paint was good for that. And then we're like, oh, this would be funny because she would have this kind of like gory Halloween face paint. I don't know, like, how many people can relate to this, but you go out and you do something fun, or you're in a costume, or you're like, you're at an amusement park, and then you get in a fight with somebody and you're like in the middle of Disneyland, you got stupid face paint on, you have to have like a fight with somebody. So we thought that would be interesting. And then we needed something about Salem for Mark to tell, Carrie, that's the girl's name. Actress was Hannah and John. And we said there was, of course, the story of Giles Corey, one of the many characters of the Crucible and of history in Salem, where they killed him by press. So they were repeatedly putting heavy stones on him until he died. Over and just additional weight until finally he died. And the guy, he was an old man apparently, and he was a total badass, and he was like, bring on more. He said more weight. He screamed more weight, apparently, as the legend goes. Eventually died. And I thought, that moment, and that was, by the way, that was the last day of shooting. But what happened to us on that day with having to adapt. Of course, there were a few other major stories where locations fell through. And when you only give yourself 9 days to shoot the movie, you don't have a lot of opportunity for things to fall through. So there's, every time one of those happened, it was like a stone tablet. It was like another boulder being put on top of us. We're like, bring it on. We'll adapt to it. I think, like, independent film in general is like you're constantly having to adapt to unforeseen challenges. And the movie, at the end of the day, like, the movie is just whatever's in here.
Right.
And so you just figure out what's a good thing to put in here that tells my story, right?
And in the book, you talk about sort of forgetting your own advice, and when you had the issue with the bar, you thought you had a reserve, the lady didn't show up, and you were all there ready to film, and somebody mentioned that, oh, we should go to see if there's another bar available, and you said, oh, we can't do that. It's what everybody's going to go in randomly in a bar at noon and take over and say, let's just film. Yeah, right. But then you internally in the book, you mentioned, oh, maybe I should take my own advice and just go and say, what's the worst they can do? Say no. So that seems to be the entire mantra of your guerrilla style independent filmmaking.
Yeah, I was in my late 20s. I was like 27 when we made that movie. I'm 40 now. And I wonder,
so you had
like,
3 features before 30?
Yeah. Classic. I made 4 before 30. So, that's how, that's how I was able to come correct with Jimmy. I wonder, like, if I was 40, could I pull those same kind of shenanigans? Or also, like, has the culture changed enough that can you really just show up to a location and But yeah, in the situation you're talking about, we showed up to this other bar that just had a couple of day drinkers in it. We offered them a dollar amount. I think it was $200, something like that. That was going to exceed whatever was going to come in during the morning. And so they were like, okay. But my wife, my dear Nina, she's the one who brokered that, as she so often solves problems for us that I didn't think were solvable. And it ended up being a pretty good series of scenes, because like the plot keeps returning to that one location. I remember we were running out of time, like severely running out of time, and we had like 3 or 4 meaty dialogue scenes, and we had to get very inventive with how we were going to shoot it, because every time, for anybody who doesn't know, every time you move the camera, you move lights, you move sound, you move everything. So you can't shoot it like, I don't know, like a home movie or something where you're just pointing the camera at whatever. Right. Every camera setup is an investment of time. And even if that time investment is 15 minutes, well, like just do the math for how long it takes to get the take. Like you will run out of hours really, really fast. If it's 10 minutes, you'll run out of hours. So this was a dialogue sequence, or a series of dialogue sequence with one of the female leads and with Mark. And instead of kind of like wrapping one scene and then moving on to the next scene, we would shoot all of Mark's angles across the entire, like across all scenes, and just have him swap clothes. So they were swap, it's faster to swap clothes than it is to swap cameras, basically. So I remember that being, and this is, I don't remember if I have this in the book, but this is an important filmmaking lesson. Because whenever I'm on other indie films, I see them make this mistake all the time, which is when there are flubs, or there's, somebody forgets their line, or there's something wrong with the frame, they always reset back to 1. Like or too often they were set all the way back to the top of the take. And I'm like, man, there's no way you're going to run the take that long. And so you have to know, when am I likely to have cut? And therefore, when am I, what would be a safe return spot for taking the take again? Because again, just do the math, like all of those small inefficiencies contribute to multi hours of wasted time.
Yeah, you do talk about that, keeping the take going and not having people stop and just reset, and unnecessarily. Some of the actors were better at it than others. So you do talk about that in the book, and I think that's a good lesson even for writers. You don't need to stop and self-correct every 5 seconds to go back and add a period somewhere where you missed it. Just keep writing. Just keep the creativity going, and you can fix it later in editing, because that's where a lot of, I know for books, that's where a lot of the book is written, is in editing, and I'm assuming film is even more so.
Yeah, and it's I think once you're in the editing mode, once you are in the editing space, I find that that's a much easier place to live. That's like a much more like, oh, okay, now I'm like, I have clay that I can mold, as opposed to I got to invent clay.
Well, and it gives yourself limits. It's kind of nice having limits, because you can only do so much when you work within those.
Exactly.
You talked, so this is the first film you had done where you didn't write it, right? Somebody else wrote this one. You were like solely the director.
Right. There was my first movie called I Need to Lose 10 Pounds. It was a comedy about it's like a trauma movie about fat people. I was very young when I made it, and I finished it when I was in college. It was my kind of like, my almost like my film school in a lot of ways. It was so arduous to get, because it had the kind of location scope of like, Lord of the Rings for 16-year-olds or something. It was like a very, very big, ridiculously big movie. It had musical numbers. But that was directed by me solely. And I remember I started writing it with one friend and kind of ended with another friend. And so that, there were other creative voices. Then on Abo the Hue Monkey, there were story writers. So my wife, her brother, and 2 of our friends and me, we outlined the whole, because it was more of a genre movie, and we wanted it to be to like hit the 3-act structure in the way that like a typical Hollywood movie would, because it was going to satirize that. So the kind of the film beats mattered. And then I went off and wrote it, and of course directed it. I'm the sole director of all 4 of them, but in this case, bunch of writers in a writer's room kind of situation. Then Sexually Frank is the only movie that I wrote and directed by myself. Yeah. Like no other voices in it. So that's like probably the most personal movie of the 4. And then Having Fun Up There was like, I'm going to direct somebody else's story, which in turn kind of makes it my story, like a lot in obviously if you're an author, the writer is the author of the piece. The auteur theory, for those who don't know, is that like while there are hundreds of people that make a movie or dozens of people or whatever, the author of the movie, the person who has the creative, who is making the minute and broad creative decisions, is the director, not the screenwriter, not the actor, even though they all play an essential role, ultimately the director. So in that sense, if you direct a movie that you didn't write, you kind of like are writing it, especially if you're an editor too, because editing is almost like a second pass at the screenplay. So that was really exciting because I didn't have access to his world. I wasn't a musician. I didn't, play bass guitar in the Somerville area, but everything he was saying symbolically, and metaphorically kind of applied to my artistic life. So it was a really like exciting thing to sink my teeth into. Otherwise I was liable to make a movie about making movies, or it was something that was like too on the nose. So it was really cool.
I think you said in the book even that since you were the one directing this ultimately would be a movie about filmmaking because that was your frame of reference going into the project.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my hook. That's my way of understanding what it is that he wrote. Right. Exactly. But in that sense, I don't have to make a movie about somebody literally making a movie, which is much better.
Editing, writing, and now you've written a book. I mean, do you enjoy writing a book? Have you written more books? Do you intend to write more books, or what do you?
This is my one and only. But I think if I made another movie, I probably would do the same exact thing where I would because there was something exciting about the inertia of like, I just shot it. I have all the emotional memory. I'm still tired from it. Let me write while I'm in this state. That was like just a cool opportunity, like a creative opportunity. Because if I had tried to write it a year later, you wouldn't have. I mean, the book wouldn't be nearly like it wouldn't have the viscerality to it that it has. So I would do it again. I loved it. I loved the process. I didn't find myself. Well, that's another thing. Like, it's nonfiction, obviously. I didn't find myself blocked because I had just experienced, it's like I had just had this huge experience. It'd be like if you, I don't know, like if you wanted to write a book about like beating cancer or something and you had just finished your chemo treatments and then start, you wouldn't be like lost on things to talk about. It's like it's all right there at my fingertips. So that was really cool. So all I had to do was kind of like let it happen. And, I imagine like if I sat down now and was like, let me write a book about being on YouTube for the last 10 years, I would struggle with that. But like your question was, what do I enjoy or kind of identify with the most out of all these different roles? I think probably even on YouTube, Boxmac, the ways that we put out, because even like our podcast, I think, we edit it quite a bit and we put out, we try to put out like deluxe edits of so that, we can communicate as accurately as possible. I think that these are like directorial skills. Ultimately, this is like the skills of an orchestrator. So whether I'm making a movie or doing like a Boxmax special or whatever, I tend to be like a creative lead in whatever, because now I have editors for the pod, and that maybe there would have been a time where I would have answered your question with like, oh, editor, because that's where I really get to have full control. But in the last like 3 years, I've kind of started to hand that off and I direct the edit. And that's been kind of exciting too.
Do you find that frees you up? I mean, in time, but
not really.
Okay.
So, I mean, it would if I had kept the standards of quality for the podcast low. So there was a multi-year period where we would put out something that was lightly edited. So if I told everybody to like just lightly edit it, well, then there'd be no problem. As it stands, like when you give one editor the ability to edit one clip, they do a good job on it because for 2 weeks, they're working on one clip that's 15 to 20 minutes or something. So what it has allowed us to do is really up the quality of the podcast. Like that's now every clip that goes out has gone through like a rigorous creative process. But as part of that, when they finish and they deliver the clip to me, it probably takes me 2 to 3 hours to kind of like review it.
Wow.
Put my own touches on it, get it uploaded, put a thumbnail. Sometimes they'll do a thumbnail, sometimes they won't. Sometimes I'll want to edit it. I have to, of course, like market it, describe it, figure out what the hook is. Like there's still like a kind of a multi-hour process, and that's per clip. And there's normally about 5 of those for every 2 weeks. And then I'm trying to make other content while I'm at it. But so yeah, it's very exciting. There's no freaking way I could deliver the podcast that's currently getting delivered without editors. It's not possible. Definitely, like, there's not enough minutes in the day. But I keep falling into the same, I don't know, trap. Maybe it's probably a good thing where whatever it is I do, I want it to be like the version of it that Frankie is the most proud of.
Right.
And like that I feel the best about. Every time I click publish, I want it to be like, yeah, I can't wait to show them this, you know?
Yeah. And I guess thinking about coming back to the book, you put out a second edition. Did you feel that was necessary to get the best version of the book out there, or you did have some things happen that you wanted to talk about in the book? I think you went to an award that went really well, a festival. I mean, that went really well. So can you talk about putting out a second edition?
Yeah, well, in effect, the second edition was really the only one that got released.
Okay.
Because so I finished and self-published on Lulu.com. I don't even know if that still exists, that service. It was a really good service, actually. Yeah. Like, I was like, this is great. But I had finished, like, by the time we were screening at film festivals. Remember, I mentioned the dinner I went to. I was like, hey, guys, I got a book. But then we went to the Austin Film Festival. We were and won the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival. We did our own four-wall screening. A bunch of other stuff happened. I went to, like, this really absurd social media class. It's a pretty funny story in the book.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that.
Really stupid. Yeah. Well, I don't even remember it.
Okay.
So, but maybe it could be entertaining to try to remember it. So it just became obvious that the story of the movie, of making the movie, was not complete. And so that's what kind of inspired the additional I think it was like 3 or 4 additional chapters.
Yeah. So the book does kind of feel like it ends and then they just keep going. And then I learned later that was a second edition. But it was a good part of the book, so I'm glad you included it. But yeah, the social media class that you went to just felt so familiar, from agents and publishers telling us you have to be on social media, you have to do all these things, and then you realize after a while you're just sort of posting to other authors who are in the same boat, and you're not really moving the needle in any particular direction because I don't know. Maybe did you feel that way?
Yeah, you feel like you're in a pyramid scheme or something.
So did that feel like?
Kind of what it felt like. Yeah, and film festivals feel like that too, by the way. And again, I don't even know like what the state of film festivals are in 2026, but the idea is like pay to submit, pay to show up, pay to market it. Like, it's all you. Like, you might as well fourth wall. And then it's like, and by the way, we don't even really have much of an audience here at the festival. So like, bring your own audience to basically like dress up and play pretend that you made a movie. It's kind of, well, in the book, like we went to Niagara, Buffalo, Niagara. Yeah. And it was like, is this a front? Like, is this even a real film festival?
Yeah.
But the Massachusetts one was great and very well attended. Austin had its ups and downs, but it was amazing to go out to Austin and do that. Sexually Frank, before that, we went to the Sydney Underground Film Festival, which was that's by far my best film festival experience. It's like go to the other end of the world to screen my movie to a bunch of strangers and film students and stuff. It was so fun. Yeah, it was really exciting.
Yeah, I was surprised.
I'm so glad I went. It's the kind of thing you might not go to, but I'm so glad I went.
And they paid for your conference or your festival attendance at some of these.
Right.
Which I was kind of shocked to hear, because we do writing conferences. This is a similar situation. We're paying for everything. You get there and you're just basically trying to get access to the people you need to talk to. And it seems almost pyramidal, but I guess necessity. Do you feel like,
I guess so.
I mean, I guess you did get some things eventually out of the festivals. At least you got some recognition. Do they help with the distribution? Because the distribution story you have in the book seemed to be sort of a dead end on all fronts.
Yeah, I mean, trying to get DVD distribution back then there were times where it was easier than other, like we, Troma distributed my first 2 movies, or my first movie actually only. I didn't sign with them on the second one. And I signed like a 20-year thing and I never saw a penny for it. It was funny. They just recently, this is our 20th year. I signed it in 2006. This is my 20th year with them. And they just uploaded it to their YouTube channel. I was like, whoa. And you're in the 20th year, you're going to just give it away for free. It's on their streaming platform. But I mean, the truth is like distribution of movies changed so much in the period of time that I was a filmmaker all the way up till now. Mm-hmm. Now looking back on it all seems so silly. I'm just fucking put it on YouTube, right? Like, It belongs on you.
Yeah.
Like YouTube is where the eyeballs are going to get. Like cut out all the middlemen, build an audience on YouTube of people who are genuinely interested in you, where you can actually like interact with people like you, and who actually will take it, who might even take an interest in reading your book or whatever. Like film festivals, that was going to be diminishing returns. It was exciting to see it on a big screen or whatever. I mean, there was some novelty to it, I suppose. Got to travel, got to go to Seattle, and that we got to do a bunch of cool stuff. But as far as trying to get eyeballs, or this idea of like, did you get formally distributed? I feel like there's hardly such a thing as formal distribution now. You would just do it yourself. It would be the most sensible thing to do by a lot. So I look back on all that and I'm like, that's funny that it really just kind of predated YouTube as we would know it. When, writing this book, like I have no YouTube presence when I wrote this book. Now it's like I've, a sizable YouTube presence. It's even funny to me to think that like that social media class would have been taught in 2014 or whatever. We're like, man, so much, especially on YouTube, so much has changed. Like the idea of having to have a hook, like nobody clicks a video that doesn't have a hook.
Right.
If you say like, if your title to this video is, I interviewed Frank Dufresne about his book, it's like, nobody's going to click on it. but if it's something like, filmmaker describes why. Yeah, exactly. So like all that stuff, like I must click. So much has changed since then. I wonder what, oh, I know it. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm remembering. I'm like, what was her advice anyway?
Well, it's
so for those who haven't read the book, it's one of the female leads in the movie. She was really, really trying to make things happen for herself in like the Boston acting scene. So she was like, and you know what's cool about actors? They're not like us filmmakers where we get down on ourselves and we think it's all lost. Like I find that actors are so resilient and have so much, of course these can be obnoxious people in some cases, none of my actors, but actors can be obnoxious people, but they're so resilient. And I think they have to be because they get rejected constantly.
Yeah. It's
such a saturated market. They show up and they're at the whim of some director, and the likelihood that director says no is high. So they're just, they really live the ethos of like the worst they could say is no and moving on. So she was just kind of like exploring every option for getting her name out there, getting into more projects. She was working for free as often as she could, like really like a huge work ethic. Maria, who plays Carla in the movie. And yeah, she was like, hey, so like there's, yeah. And I don't know if this has ever happened like in your neck of the woods, but in cities, there would be kind of these personalities that would pop up. And we're like, ooh, everybody's listening to Erica. Everything that Erica has to say about social media, everybody wants a piece of that. Again, I don't know if that's still true nowadays, but back it was like Erica or whatever her name was all the rage. And she was teaching the social media class in like a kind of a dank like art studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I'll go. And I went and they set up some chairs and there was like some cookies. And she just basically told us a bunch of cynical shit about social media for like it was supposed to be 2 days. I don't think I went to the second day. I think I did day one only. But now I'm remembering the advice was mostly about networking. It was mostly about, yeah, you know how people on LinkedIn, there's like a lot of like BS posts on LinkedIn that are like very excited about my new opportunity. Like, hey, way to go. And like, it's just generating noise to get a job. Yeah. The advice was do that on Facebook, do that on Twitter in 2014.
Well, that's the first thing I thought of when you're in that chapter you're talking about. It's like, oh, it sounds like LinkedIn, but it also sounds exactly like the advice I still get as a writer. I had a former agent who constantly was pushing, the social media stuff. And then he just go out there and you see that people pumping each other up to pump each other up so that they get a return.
I'm like, does this work?
I don't
would I want to read a book because I saw somebody post on social media? Maybe it's not meant to be A to Z like that. Maybe it's just supposed to ingratiate you to somebody who matters. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you try to have the book traditionally published at all? Did you send it out anywhere?
No, I think I was just eager to like see it in print. I was like, I'm just going to do this. Yeah. It would have been interesting to at least give it a shot, but I didn't have like the wherewithal back then.
I really enjoyed the Audible book because A, you have a good speaking voice, and B, you intercut a lot of songs. You have other people from the book come do an aside. So I think it's a really good experience. And then I also think that doing your own, that version of audiobook is gives you, two ways to sell the book, because you're going to try and sell obviously the physical paper book, and then the Audible book is a different experience completely, the way you have it done.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that went into
Yeah.
thinking when you did the Audible book, or if you just thought you needed to have an audio book with it.
Yeah, I probably thought, well, I'm the kind of guy that would listen to a book on the train.
Yeah.
So I ought to have one. And I got it in. And I think like when you self-publish with Lulu, they're like, do you have an audio book? Like there's like a little wizard that kind of encourage you, like hardcover, paperback. I wanted to be able to provide any way somebody might be interested in engaging with the material. And I assume that, of course, I've made it free. So you can listen to it on YouTube. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts. More Weight, The Making of Having Fun Up There, and Other Filmmaking Tales. One thing, Lulu made the hardcovers are awesome, by the way, but they're so expensive. It's like $70 or something to get like one like full color hardcover. So I have like a handful of those just as a novelty, but generally I think this is like, $15 or $12 or something. And, it's all here. And, shout out to my friend Emily Brinkmeyer, who did all the layout. So the reason it looks so good in paper is because she spent, and I kept rewriting it, and that was really messing with her life. Because if you rewrite a little, because it's basically laid out, meticulously, and that it would just cause these cascading problems. But she did this all in Adobe InDesign.
Okay.
So I think like Lulu had kind of like auto layout, even back in 2014, it had like auto layout type stuff, but she did it by hand. I recorded the audiobook by hand. I remember just like while reading it being like, oh, it'd be really nice to be able to drop the song in so they know what I'm talking about. Whenever I'm working on anything, I'm always just like, what would the listener want? What would they be missing? What context can I fill in for them? It's just like a communication reflex. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that makes sense. I think it's an enjoyable experience. And More Weight is the name of the book.
Yeah.
Frankie, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. And what we have coming up from you? Do you have where can we find you?
Let's see. What do we? Yeah. So subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment and Red Cow Arcade. If you want to check in with our podcast, we talk about video games, other YouTubers, the business of YouTube. We talk about, we do like movie reviews of like famous YouTube movies, like the channel Awesome Movies is a favorite around here. We're going to do another one of those this summer, Linkara's movie, the Atop the Fourth Wall movie. This Friday, I'm recording with Freddie Williams, comic book artist Freddie Williams. He did Batman versus TMNT and a bunch of other stuff. We're going to do, and he appeared on Red Letter Media a bunch of times. We're going to talk in depth, I don't even know for how many hours, about one of our favorite movies on the planet, which is American Movie, starring Mark Borchardt. So that's going to be really fun. I think that's going to be a highlight of the year. A couple months ago, we did a parody of Hot Ones, the sort of spicy, the hot sauce interview show. And that was a great video. Like we actually got real vulnerable and opened up about ourselves, and people seemed to really like that.
That was you and John Hunt.
Me and John. John is, of course, my longtime producer, friend, co-host, audio guy, musician, everything to me. Big brother. He and myself and EJ, we're going to go out to a place called Analog Fest. We love CRTs and old video games and retro media. And so Analog Fest in Dedham, we're going to go check that out on May 31st and probably make some content there. So just TJ, there's constantly stuff cooking at Red Cow Entertainment.
No, it's a channel that always surprises me. So I really enjoy watching you on YouTube and checking out the website. It's cool stuff.
If they're interested in the book, Apple Podcasts, there's a YouTube playlist on Red Cow Entertainment. You can listen to it on redcowentertainment.com. If you go under podcasts, it's just there as a playlist. And of course, you can buy it on audible.com. If you already have a membership, you can buy paperback, you can buy hardcover. For some reason, nobody should buy hardcover, but you can buy paperback. So if you're into books and you're into filmmaking and you liked anything I had to say, maybe this is the book for you. It's a hard sell.
Well, I think it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. Even if for writers, I think it's good. Just because that whole process is very familiar to the ones that writers go through, or a lot of them are.
Right.
Your distribution discussions are very similar to our own tries at getting published. And
I should make a movie about a writer. It would be like an interesting sequel to that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Just the forlorn writer in 2026. I don't know where we
What's
where
this,
we
I
go.
mean, I don't. How many books does the average person read per year? Like that'd be the average American. Is it one? Is it two? Like
I think it's less than one.
less than one. Yeah. It's hard to break into that. To be there one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be James Patterson.
Right. It takes up all the bandwidth.
I appreciate it. I
you.
really do appreciate your time and helping with this.
It was so good. Thank you so much, TJ, for the opportunity. I love being able to talk about the book. It's really great. And thank you. Your content is really fun. I saw that video about like what story in Lord of the Rings would I adapt, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff coming out from your channel. So people should all check that out.
All right, thanks, Frankie.
All right, man. Talk to you.
Thanks everyone to turning into this episode of Fireside Writer. I had a great conversation with Frankie, and I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check him out at redcowentertainment.com, on YouTube at Red Cow Entertainment and Red Cow Arcade. It was a pleasure talking with him, and I think we can all take a lot away from his book, More Weight, so make sure you check it out. You can find it at redcowentertainment.com, Audible, or on Amazon. So until next time, this is Fireside Writer. I'm TJ Stecker. I'll see you by the fire.